So today, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go ahead for our warm-up and go over, and what we're looking for is X and Y intercepts. And we're looking at a couple different shapes. This first one here is a parabola. So we are looking for the places where the parabola crosses the x-axis. So we have here and we have here. Now you can tell in the instructions that we need to write it as the number, comma, 0. We're writing them as ordered pairs. So for our first problem here, as you can see, that first one crosses at -1, 0. And our second one here goes ahead and it crosses at 3, 0. So as we are looking at this problem, our answer is going to be -1, 0 and 3, 0. Now, as you can tell, the definition of an x-intercept is when y is 0, because we're moving right or left on the axis and then freezing, not going up or down. So our answer for problem number 1 is the x-intercepts are -1, 0 and 3, 0. Taking a look at our second problem here, it's looking for the y-intercept of this graph. Now, our y-intercept is the place where it crosses the y-axis. And of course, you can even see the y on there. So we are crossing the y-axis right here for our parabola. Now, what we look at when we're looking at our y is there is a 0 in the x because we don't move right or left, and then a number for the y. So in this case, we have the ordered pair 0, -3 for our y-intercept. So remember, a y-intercept has a number for the y value and a 0 for x. The x-intercepts have a number for your x and a 0 for y. Let's go ahead and take a look at our next graph. And as you can tell, this is a square root function. So we want to know what the x-intercept is. So we're looking and seeing where it's crossing that x-axis. And as you can tell, it is crossing here at the ordered pair 2, 0. So your answer should be 2, 0 for problem number 3. Continuing on here, we're looking for what is the y-intercept of this graph. So we're looking to see where this function crosses the y-axis. And as you can tell, it does not. So there is no y-intercept because it does not cross the y-axis. A square root function has a starting point and it goes in one direction forever. And that's because we can't take the square root of a negative number. So in this case, for problem number 4, there is no y-intercept. So it's possible, of course, to sometimes have a y, sometimes have a couple x's, but we just have to really analyze by looking at that graph. Now, this one we're looking at a table. It says, what are the x-intercepts? Now, remember what we talked about in the very beginning. Our x-intercepts is when y is 0. So we're taking a look here, and I'm looking and scanning for when y is 0. And y is 0 3 different times. So that means that our picture is going to cross the x-axis in 3 different places. So there are 3 of them that you needed to press here. We have the ordered pair -3, 0, -1, 0, and +1, 0. So we have 3 different x-intercepts for this. Remember, it's not necessarily 1. Sometimes it's 0, sometimes it's 1, sometimes it's 2, sometimes it's 3. It just depends on the number of times that that graph crosses the x-axis. And remember, we know it's the x-intercept when our y is 0. So we need to be able to read that from a table as well. Our next one says, what are the y-intercepts? So just like we know that x-intercepts has a number for x and a 0 for y, we know that y-intercepts have a 0 for y. So we're scanning our x's and we're looking for that 0 for the x. And as you can tell, there is a single y-intercept, and that is at the ordered pair 0, 2. The ordered pair 0, 2. So once again, here we go. We have that ordered pair 0, 2 for the 6th question on your warm-up. Okay, now we have an equation. And I'm going to go ahead and solve these. We have a 5x minus 2y equals 40. And problem number 7 is to find the x-intercept. And problem number 8 is to find the y-intercept. So this actually involves a little bit of math instead of just looking like the previous ones. So once again, we know that the x-intercept is when y is 0. So we're going to go ahead and plug in 0 for y for this equation. So we have 5x minus 2 times 0 equals 40. 5x equals 40. Divide both sides by 5. Use your calculator if you need to. X is equal to 8. Now, once again, that means our intercept is 8, but we would write that as an ordered pair, 8, 0. Now, we're going to go ahead and do the same thing with our 5x minus 2y equals 40, same equation, but we know that our y-intercept is when x is equal to 0. So we're going to rewrite this equation, and we're going to make x 0 and solve for y. We're going to divide both sides by negative 2, and y is equal to negative 20. Once again, we then are going to write that as an ordered pair. We have a 0 for our x position and a negative 20 for the y. Now, a great thing to do for these when we have an equation is to check your answer on Desmos. So we're going to go ahead and look at that. So what we're doing, we're going to go ahead and just plug that equation in. 5x minus 2y equals 40. And we're going to simply check that x and y intercept. So here we have our x-intercept crossing the x-axis at 8, 0, and that's what we got algebraically. And we have our y-intercept, and that, of course, is crossing the y-axis at negative 20. So, ladies and gentlemen, remember, you need to make sure that you are hanging on to all of the work from your warm-ups. We will check this for Chapter 8. Let's go ahead and work on today's lesson, which is factoring.